Welcome to the show, folks. This is Wrestling Changed My Life. Here we go.
He was like, I want you to come down here and fight MMA in Peru. And I'm like, no, man, I have like this good Wall Street job. Like I work on Wall Street. Like I can't do that.
We can endure anything and adapt and pivot and change. Wrestling gave us that ability.
I would say nothing in life has impacted me more than the things wrestling has taught me in terms of self-reflection, resilience.
Toughness. Some guys have it, some guys don't.
Adversity, 100%. How to pick myself up and be a man after I failed.
And everything that has shaped my life and where I'm at today would not be there without the values and basically the lessons I've learned through the sport of wrestling.
For me, wrestling saved my life because it allowed me to focus and channel my energy.
We're fortunate if you wrestle, because if you wrestle, natural talent helps, but it's 5% of the ingredient. It pales in comparison to heart and technique and effort.
It humbled me, taught me humility. Nothing can humble you more than wrestling. I think it's the learning to adapt, right? You learn how to adapt, you learn how to solve problems.
You know, if I look back at my time I spent wrestling, if it gave me one thing more than anything else, it's mental toughness.
Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. The Wrestling Changed My Life podcast is here. My guest today is the great Rollie Peterkin. Rollie is one of the most fascinating cats I've had on the podcast. He was a stud wrestler at Penn, went to Wall Street, was doing well, but then he up and leaves his life, leaves his comforts, and moves to Peru to fight MMA professionally. It's an incredible story, one that's still going on. Rollie's traveled to 56 countries. He's written a book. He hosts a podcast called the Divergent Path Podcast where he's sharing his story. And really, the whole focus of this conversation is how Rollie escaped the American dream to live a life that fulfilled him. Really enjoyed it. Hope you do as well. Check out his book. It's called The Cage, Escaping the American Dream. And as I mentioned, his podcast is called the Divergent Path Podcast. Fan of the week goes to Jake Campbell, an Iowa fan, a former D1 wrestler. Jake, thank you for tuning in, my friend. We appreciate it. Folks, last but not least, if you want to subscribe to our text message service to get automatic updates from the podcast, text the word WRESTLE, WRESTLE, to 22454. Again, that's Wrestle to 22454. That's it, ladies and gents. Let's give it up for the great one, Rollie Peterkin. Rollie Peterkin, welcome to the podcast. And I probably just butchered your last name, sir.
Peterkin.
Peterkin, excuse me.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this, man. You have an incredible story to tell. But before we get to it, I just got to ask. You're from Wellesley, Mass., right?
Yeah.
Have you ever been to the Linden store?
Yeah. Have you?
Oh, my God. My first job was in Wellesley, and I had this Thanksgiving sandwich from there. It was like cranberry stuffing and turkey, and I still dream about it to this day. And once I saw you were from Wellesley, I'm like, I got to ask about the Linden store.
Yeah, man, that Thanksgiving sandwich is delicious. They have the best subs there. Man, that is a random place. So what were you doing in Wellesley?
My first job was there. It was it was kind of a tech company. I worked in sales there for my first 2 months. I graduated grad school and I moved to Wellesley, and I actually lived in Newton, but was living in Newton in a hotel June and July of that summer. And that was like the first time I experienced the East Coast ever. It was awesome.
Wow, that is a random little place there. And yeah, when I was in high school, that was the cool place to like go on like a half day or whatever. Everyone goes and gets subs there and meets up, and it's the kind of social scene and all that stuff. So that's cool that you've been there.
Small world, dude. So you were a dominant Massachusetts high school wrestler, and we're talking about Wellesley, Mass. That's in that area, obviously. How'd you get to Blair Academy?
So yeah, I mean, I grew up wrestling in Massachusetts from when I was 7 years old. Started wrestling and, took to it right away. And I was really lucky that at a young age, I kind of fell in with Kendall Cross, who was coaching at Harvard at the time. And he really like took me under his wing. And like, I think, I was doing well in Massachusetts before that, but that really kind of like got me to that next level. And, I started doing well, started traveling further. We always had to go to tournaments, we always had to drive down to New Jersey or Pennsylvania to get the kind of competition. I mean, I love Massachusetts, but there's, there wasn't the highest level of competition here. Like a lot of times in high school, I'd be wrestling someone who was like a first year wrestler. I mean, like as a 103 pounder, my coach would say like, make sure you get the full match. Don't pin this guy right away. And I'd pin him in 30 seconds or something. And he'd be like, what happened? I was like, I was trying not to. So I always wanted to get that competition. Like I would bump up weight classes. I bumped up and beat the state champion at the weight above me. And I was kind of like, I was bumping up 2 weight classes. I was just trying to get that competition. And so at a certain point in high school, it was like, I want to prepare myself better for college wrestling. And, for years we had talked about Blair. I had been to a camp there and gotten to know Buxton. And it just kind of seemed like the thing to do. And so also I was kind of small for a 125 pounder. And so I got an extra year of high school there too. So I did 2 years at Blair, and it was just to kind of like prepare for college and grow into the weight class. And it did just that.
What was the transition? Because I know you were already a dominant high school wrestler. Did you fit right in, or was there a learning curve?
I will say that like I had technique wise, I was all right. I had won Fargo twice, I think, before I even went there. And so I was up there. What I wasn't prepared for was the practices were grueling. I mean, it's like what you hear about, the Iowa wrestling room or something. You have guys in there you're wrestling against. I mean, every day I would wrestle with Kellen Russell, Eric Medina, Travis Blasco, all these guys. And like someone like, Kellen Russell was a killer, of course, and so you do like shark bait with these guys, and every day it was just such a grind. And we worked hard. Buxton worked us hard for sure, like the conditioning that we did outside of practice and the lifting. And so it was like a full schedule. And that's why it's such an elite level. Like Buxton really pushes the guys and really expects a lot from them. And it definitely helped bring me to that next level. The whole system of wrestling. When I was in college, I used his near wrist series and the top riding stuff that I learned there. And it was an amazing experience. It was definitely, to answer your original question though, it was brutal. Like going in there, I was used to being like a dominant guy and kind of cruising through practice, and then to just go in there and have to fight for every single point was tough.
It had to be awesome though to be around Buxton, who's been on this podcast, and he's just a psychological master, it seems, when you're getting guys ready for that next level.
Yeah, I had him on my podcast as well, and he is just like, I think I said in the intro to my podcast is that I've never met anyone in any field who is as dedicated to the craft as Buxton is to wrestling. And that's like including all levels of wrestling and all these other elite fields I've been in. I mean, if Buxton is awake, he's thinking about wrestling. And he is just like, every waking minute he's thinking, how can I get my wrestlers better? How can I make them better? And it's not just he's studying techniques online, but he's doing research on, he would send us articles about, getting the proper amount of sleep. And he had a nutritionist come in and speak to us. I mean, he will leave no stone unturned. And so, it really, he's really just such a master of the craft. And I learned so much from him. And he just, like I said, I mean, he will do every single thing he can to make his wrestlers the best in the country. So, he kind of inspires a certain level of confidence too. When you're going out there, like you have that confidence of, this guy prepared me. He's prepared so many of the other greats, guys, Steve Mocco and Corey Cooperman and Zach Esposito. And so you just have that confidence of like, I should know what to do.
And if you can share, and if it's too personal, you don't have to, what was Buxton's reaction when he told him you were moving to Peru to start this crazy new life?
So nothing's too personal, by the way. Go ahead, ask me all the tough stuff. But he, it was years later. I think I hadn't kept in close touch with him, but I think I saw him. I might have seen him in New York at a wrestling tournament or something after I'd already been down there, and he just was like looked at me and just shook his head like, you know, you crazy, you crazy guy, or whatever. And yeah, I mean, he's commented on a few things I've posted on like Instagram or whatever, and he's just like, man, you are insane. What's wrong with you? Because I mean, he's a guy. He's got his like such singular focus of dedication to wrestling, and it's funny because like, you know, he's a crazy dude in a lot of ways, but yeah, I think he thinks that I'm just like a total nutcase.
Well, and this is what we're going to talk about today. So folks who don't know the story, Rollie wrestled at Penn, 3-time national qualifier, made it to the blood round 3 times. But then after that, you went on to be a successful trader in Wall Street. You know, from the outside looking in, it's like, hey, this kid's got everything going for him. And I'm sure you felt that, but there was something gnawing at you. And then lo and behold, you've been to 56 countries, you quit your job, you moved to Peru. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But I just want folks to understand, you know, traditionally with a wrestling podcast, we would just go down your career and let's talk about the Nationals. Let's talk about Fargo. But, you know, I just want to give folks that background. So you're this elite wrestler. You go to Penn, you're a finance guy. You're just like, you got it all buttoned up. Take us to the national tournament 2011, and then we'll just go from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, ever since I was a kid, I dreamed of, you know, the NCAA tournament and standing on the podium. I used to go every year, like a lot of people in wrestling. You know, the NCAA tournament is our, like, it's our Woodstock, and you go there and you see these dreams are made and everything. And so, yeah, for 3 years in a row, I made it to the blood round, and I was in the quarterfinals 2 of the years. And, you know, my senior year was in Philadelphia, hometown. Was wrestling for Penn, and you know, I was pretty confident. I think I was top 10 going into it or something. And you know, I was winning the very first match. I was winning, and I was winning by like 3 points or something like that. And I got put to my back. I went in for a shot and got cradled to my back with like 30 seconds left for 5 points, and so I lost. And I'm laughing about it now, but it's like, it was not, you know, this is something that it destroyed me. And so I wrestled back, and it was like this crazy feeling, you know, I had to win, God knows how many, like 6 matches or so, no, not 6 matches, but a lot to get back to just the round of 12. And it was like this really like do or die. I mean, it really felt like every time I was going to go into to like a battle for my life. You know, it was my senior year, and I, you know, had this dream to All-American, and like I'm fighting. I won a bunch of matches, make it back to the round of 12, and I wrestled a guy, Scotty Sentes, who I'd lost to in the round of 12 2 years before. And again, I was winning the match, not by a lot, maybe by a point or two. And I think I shot in. He's a real tall, long guy, cradled me up, put me on my back, and pinned me. And I, you know, I was just devastated. I mean, I was inconsolable. I cried for hours and hours. And I just like, I mean, I'm just getting chills all over my body even talking about it now. Like, and it's funny, I can kind of like laugh and joke about it, but for like months afterwards, I was like in like a really deep state of depression. I was drinking a lot. I was really upset by it. And, you know, it was just something, it was like you spend how many tens of thousands of hours and like, you know, metric tons of sweat and blood to try to get to this thing you spend your whole life doing, and then it just all falls short. And it was really hard for me, and for years afterwards I like couldn't even like really talk about it, kind of thing.
So after that, you went on to Wall Street. You're making some good money, I assume. What were you doing on Wall Street?
Yeah, so I had gotten a job for the, you know, working for a bank on Wall Street, and I had interned like almost every year during college. I had gotten internships around. I studied at the Wharton Business School at Penn, and I was really like passionate about Wall Street. I mean, I even worked on the New York Stock Exchange one summer, and like I was the guy. Like if you ask any of my college teammates, they were like, "Rollie's going to be this like bazillionaire," because I was so obsessed with it. I was reading in my free time. I'm reading all these finance books and everything, and it was kind of my life. And so yeah, I got this job. It was like, okay, I finished wrestling. I was really unsatisfied with the way my career ended, of course, but I was like, all right, well, now I got this like sick job on Wall Street. And so I kind of took all that energy and I just poured it into that. I went full, and I did like a few rotations, and I wound up on a corporate bond trading desk for like a prop desk. And I was doing some trading. I was doing well, and I was kind of growing really quickly. It was a small group. And so, yeah, I was starting to do pretty well by the end. I mean, I took my lumps for sure. It's a brutal world out there. You get screamed at a few times and all that stuff. But I was starting to get it after a few years.
So while you're doing this and you're trying to find a new addiction, right? Because every addict needs a new addiction, and wrestlers at that level are just addicts. I've come to realize that. And if you don't find a new addiction quickly, you can go down the drugs or the alcohol route. You went down the trading route. I'm sure there was some partying mixed in, but were you healed at this point emotionally, or did you just push it off to like the back corner of your mind and locked it away?
No, I would say that like I really missed wrestling. Like I was not, it wasn't even subconscious. I was like consciously, I would think about how much I missed wrestling. And I was, it was just something that kind of like I would think about all the time. But at the same time, I wasn't really training that much. I mean, there was like once in a while I'd go to the New York Athletic Club, and I wasn't working out. I got kind of fat, and I was drinking a lot for sure, like going out, partying, and the whole Wall Street. And it was not like the Wolf of Wall Street. Everyone always asks me that, so I'll just answer that. Everyone says it was like that. It was not that crazy, but I was going out a lot, and so yeah, I missed it. And it's actually funny. One day after, I think I've been working for a few years, it was just kind of eating at me, and I missed it. And so like my buddy, I don't know if you know Kyle Sermonara. We're pretty close friends, and he and I were talking, and we were like, hey, the Northeast Regionals is in a few weeks. Do you want to go wrestle at that just for like shits and giggles? And yeah, so we both signed up, and we like drove down to like wherever, East Stroudsburg, I think it was, and just decided to wrestle I cut a little bit of weight. I cut like 5 or 10 pounds down to 66 kilos. And we wrestled, and the whole time we were just kind of taking it like a joke. We like went to like got steak dinner the night before, and like had a beer, and we're just like sitting there. We didn't even warm up for our matches, and we're just like, let's just have fun with this. And the craziest thing happened is that we both won our weight classes and like destroyed everyone. And
no way, I didn't know about this. So what year is this?
This was 2013. So the weirdest thing happened. So when you win the Northeast Regionals, you qualify for the World Team Trials. So
did you go?
Yeah, well, I get back to work on Monday, and like I told my coworkers, and they were like, "What the hell, Rollie? You won?" And they're like, "You have to go." And so I went down to the World Team Trials were in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and I booked a flight down and went. And like again, I was not taking it seriously. I didn't really like train that much. I was just kind of like having fun. I went out there and I got smoked. I mean, I went 0-2, but it was like that's not why I was going out there. I was just kind of like having fun with it, and that was a cool experience. It was like there were like 3 former 2-time NCAA champions at my weight. Like there was only in my weight class there were like 16 guys, and it was like everyone. I mean, it was like Metcalf was there, Jordan Oliver. It was like this. It was just this like insanely stacked weight, and it was like this like and also Rollie Peterkin.
Did you have any scraps at the Northeast Regional where you were really taxed and you forgot how tired you get in a wrestling match, or did you blow through everybody?
No, I like teched everyone. I've always like freestyle. Like I have a good top game, and I can just take someone down and turn them up. Kendall Cross taught me his high gut and like a trap arm kind of series. And so like I don't even think I went to like second period or something in that tournament.
So you just rolled them. And so how long after you wrestled at the World Team Trials to when you went to Peru for the first time?
So let's see. I don't even know the timing of that. It was a few months later. Like I kind of did that, and I was kind of like, oh, well, that was fun. And I just kind of shrugged it off like, all right, well, back to work now. And a few months later, it was actually, I think it was like November 2013. So whenever that works out, a few college buddies of mine were like, let's go down to Peru to visit Ben. And my friend Ben is Ben Ryder, who eventually wound up fighting in Bellator and is like, I think he's got like 16, 17 professional MMA wins. He's done really well. And he wrestled with me in college. He was a heavyweight, and he graduated and went down to Peru to like volunteer in a little village there. And he was teaching English to some kids. Ben, he now works for Beat the Streets Philly. He's like, Ben Ryder is one of the most amazing people I've ever met. Like everything he ever does, he's thinking about how he can help people and charity. And I mean, he founded his own charities down there in Peru. And he's just like, he's the most selfless person I know. And so when he was down there, he started fighting MMA, and he became like this champion of the big league down there. And he just kind of like randomly took to it. And it's funny because he's like the nicest, sweetest guy, and he became like a top MMA fighter. And so I went down to visit him, and he was like, he's famous down there. Like I even learned later, like he would be stopped on the street and asked for his autograph. And when I eventually moved to Peru later, like he's on TV all the time. He was like he was like featured on game shows and like all this stuff, because he's like a big American guy that like did really well in MMA down there. And so he just became this kind of like this like attraction down there. And so I went down to visit him, and we went to Machu Picchu and did all that stuff and had this amazing time. And then the last day I was down there, he was like, come train at the MMA gym with me in Lima. And he had this coach, this guy, Ivan Iberico, who's like a legend in Peru. He's like, I mean, even to this day, if I meet someone from Peru, like if anyone from Peru is listening to this, they would definitely know who he is. Like he's kind of a household name down there. And he was this like really old school, rugged MMA fighter. He's got huge cauliflower ears. He's fought like 50 times. He used to fight like in like the back of a bar for like, no rules, no time limits, no gloves. You could kick in the nuts. You could pull hair, like that kind of stuff. He's this old school guy. And so I went to the gym, and they were like, I want you to go against Ivan. And I'm like, all right, sure. And I like wrestled with him, and I went like upper body and just like threw him, just like double overhooks and like all this stuff. And I just kind of like went to town, and everyone in the gym was like watching, and they were like, wow, this is crazy. And he gets up there, and he's like really excited because they don't have like the same level of wrestling down in South America. And he's like, they're seeing techniques that they've never seen before. And he's really excited. He's like, come out for a beer with me. And like, he invites me out for some drinks. And he was like, I want you to come down here and fight MMA in Peru. And I'm like, no, man, I have like this good Wall Street job. Like I work on Wall Street. Like I can't do that.
I'm a professional, man.
Yeah. I'm like, do you understand? Like that's like crazy. And he just like, he's such a hard-nosed guy in like a good way. He's kind of like this like Gable kind of figure, like just so serious. And he just looks you in the eyes, and he just says like, you're going to come down here and you're going to fight MMA for us. And I'm like, and this is all through Ben translating, by the way. I didn't speak any Spanish at the time, and he didn't speak English. And he just keeps saying it over and over again. And we're drinking whiskey, and we're getting kind of drunk. And like, he's like, insisting on it. He's like, I can tell you still have this itch to compete and everything like that. And it just kind of like, I went like later that day, I went back to the United States, and it just kind of like stuck in my head. And I was just like thinking the whole time, like, man, what if I did this? Like, what if I did something like this? And, I was sitting in an office all day. And so I was kind of like, I'd been feeling a little bit claustrophobic and like kind of cooped up, and like, I wasn't doing a lot of physical stuff, and I was just kind of like wanted this sense of adventure, and like the travel had awakened it. And so I started thinking like, what if I did that? Like that would be so crazy, but like, what an adventure that would be. And, I was doing well at work. So I was about to get like a whole, like a portfolio to trade and all this stuff, but it was just kind of like eating away at me. And I kind of like started listening to other people around me, and a lot of other people that work on Wall Street would share a kind of story of like, oh, my dream is to one day like coach my high school football team, or my one dream is to one day start like a charter fishing boat or something like that. And I would kind of like start hearing these people and be like, they're never going to do this. And I was like, everyone says like, okay, in 2 or 3 years, I'll do something, or in 2 or 3 years when I make more money or whatever. And I was kind of thinking like, I would see these people that are older that are stuck there that like hated it or something. And I was like, I don't want to do that. And it just kind of like hit me, and it started growing and growing. And so I started making plans to go down to Peru. And I signed up for classes at Renzo Gracie's jiu-jitsu in New York City, doing some boxing at Church Street for like a few months. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going.
Oh man, a lot to unpack there. I want to know though, was it more so just like a low grade, not even depression, but just unhappiness with work, and that you had kind of been sold a bill of goods that, hey, I'm supposed to be happy making all this money in Wall Street, I have it made, and you weren't feeling that way? Or was it more the itch to compete?
It was probably both. That's a good way to put it. Like, I think I was just, I just, the sitting down for 12 hours of a day is just not me. Like, I have energy and I have this drive to do things and to like, be outside and to go have an adventure. And I wasn't very satisfied with the job. And it was just kind of like, it just wasn't doing it for me. And like I wasn't getting a lot of sleep and all this stuff. Like, it was not what I was looking for. And then like you kind of multiply that by the itch to compete and to get back out there. And then this kind of like random thing falls on my lap, like, this Peru. And it's just like I think also the fact that it was so crazy, the fact that it wasn't just like some minor step to some other thing, like the fact that it was like, all right, I'm just going to dynamite everything and start some new thing. Like, I think that kind of appealed to me too. Like, I like big decisions like that and big changes. And it kind of like really threw me into the deep end. I was like, all right, and it was scary. It was really scary because I started making these plans and I started telling people like, I think I'm going to move down to Peru and do this. And like, it kind of divided my friends. Like, half of them would say, you're an idiot. What are you doing? You're throwing away your career. And then the other half would say, that's amazing. That's the coolest thing I've ever heard. Go follow your dreams. And I mean, my family didn't take it well, as you could guess. They were pretty upset with me. And, that was not easy. My grandfather called me screaming at me, and it was really difficult. Like, I had to like really put the blinders on and just say, at a certain point, I just got to a point where I said, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm not going to let anything stand in my way from doing this, because I was getting like a lot of pushback from a lot of people, and there were a lot of very valid reasons why I shouldn't do this.
Like what? Outside of the money?
Well, I mean, the money, the fact that like my dad was like, why can't you just go travel? Why do you have to cage fight? And I was like,
that's fair.
Yeah. And I mean, in South America, not many regulations, all this stuff. And then, yeah, like throwing your career away. Like, when I quit, my boss was like, that it's going to be like, if you ever want to come back to this industry, it's going to be really difficult for you because, people won't trust that you're going to stay around. And yeah, I mean, I was throwing away a really good career path. I was on like I was really lucky to be on just about like one of the best places I could be in my career. And I was just, throwing that all away. So it was, it was scary for sure.
How nervous were you the day you finally had to tell your boss that you were leaving in 2 weeks?
So, first of all, it wasn't 2 weeks. We don't really do that. Wall Street, you don't really do that. When you quit, you quit. That's it.
They let you out the door. That's it.
Yeah. And I was super nervous, but I was like kind of in the zone. I remember like just going up and up that elevator and like being like, well, I'm going to do this. And like, I mean, I was kind of like, I don't know. I knew I was going to do it. And it was weird because everyone had to go through my boss, and then I had to meet with like his boss and meet with all these other people on the way out. And like, everyone just like was looking at me like they thought I would probably had a mental breakdown. And I mean, so yeah, in the ensuing like weeks and months, I kept in touch with everyone. There were a lot of wrestlers at my company also, so people were like followed me, and people were following my eventual MMA career and everything like that. And so, yeah, it was weird. It was definitely weird, but it was, yeah, I was very, very nervous that day, but I did it. You know, again, I just had to put the blinders on and say, you know what, like no matter what, I'm just gonna. It was like autopilot. Like I can be nervous, but I'm gonna do this anyway.
And did you go to Peru shortly after, or did you stay in the States and train for a little bit?
No, I like went to Peru pretty quickly after. I think maybe I took a few weeks to like get my things in order, but I had not, let me highlight how little training I had done. Like I did like a month or two of jujitsu in New York and like a few boxing classes. And I had done some jujitsu over the years, but like, you know, very sporadic. And I just flew down to Peru. I didn't speak Spanish. I was going to live with Ben, and like I was like, well, this is it. You know, I'm going to do this thing like MMA in South America. Let's go.
Oh my God. I'm laughing, but really the story moves me very deeply emotionally because I'm in high tech sales. And like you say, you know, we all know those directors or VPs that say, oh, I can't wait to be done, or I'd like to do this. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't wait to be done? You're 40. You have 20 more years left of this. I'm only, 9 years behind you. That scares the shit out of me, So it's just, it's cool to hear someone who's finally said, I'm going to do it, and you did it. So when you get down to Peru, are you living with your buddy, or like, what's the situation when you get down there?
Yeah, so I was living with Ben. He had like an extra bedroom, and he had a family. He was married to a Peruvian woman, had a kid, and he was like, Ben lived in Peru for like 6 years or something, or maybe, I don't know. Like he lived in there for a long time. He went like fully native. He speaks fluent Spanish. he became like a Peruvian, and
he's like the governor down there.
Yeah, well now he's back in the States now, but he was like, I mean, it was like in this neighborhood of Barranco in Lima. And we had a really unique, there was a weird like situation in this gym. There was this like mega rich guy who like funded this gym, like kind of like a Foxcatcher kind of situation, but not without the tragic ending.
Right.
And like we got paid to train, and they had a gym with bunk beds. Most of the guys lived in the bunk beds in the back of the gym. And they had a chef there, and we had 3 meals a day, and it was all like we got to keep all of our fight money, and we didn't have to pay for anything. It was just this really weird situation. So it was really unique. And so like that gym down there in Peru, like we had, part of the interesting thing was that like we had to train 3 times a day. It was like part of the situation. So like I got down there, and I was just like, I was not in great shape, and it was like, that was, talk about like going to Blair, but this was like, wow, I am in awful shape. And I was dying for like weeks down there. And that gym, there were 5 like professional fighters on the roster. And it's me, and then Ben went and fought in Bellator. And then the other 3 guys fight in the UFC.
Holy shit. I didn't even know it was that deep down there. Wow.
Well, it's not. It's just this one gym that was like this like all-star team of Peruvian guys, and we had Ivan in our corner. So 2 of them were on the Ultimate Fighter Latin America. This guy Enrique Barzola won it one year, and then the next year Claudio Puelles got second, and they got UFC contracts from that. So it was just, but this is before, at the time they weren't, like at the time no one was in the UFC or Bellator. It was just us, and it was just like, but it was this kind of cool moment in history, and that was part of the reason why I wanted to write this book eventually, because I was like there for this weird moment in history in South American and Peruvian MMA that was like, just a very unique moment.
Yeah, and we're gonna link to the book in the show notes. It's called The Cage, and it's it's about your journey. Obviously, we're talking about, but to me, the craziest part about the journey is that you, even when you were done fighting in Peru, you went on this just this crazy rocket ship of just traveling, all these, you've been to like 50, 60 countries, and there's a number of stories I want to ask you about, but I just got to go back to, all right, you're in Peru, you're like 2-3 weeks in, you're on the grind again. Are you feeling scared? Are you feeling great? Where are you at 2-3 weeks in?
So leading up to it, I hadn't like allowed myself to be scared, kind of like I was just like so focused on it. I'm gonna do it. Once I got down there, I was I got like very nervous about a lot of things. I was like way in over my head in a lot of ways. And I think back on the time and it's just like, it's very like wistful or whatever, but it was scary at the time. Yeah. I mean, I was in Peru, I'm navigating this new culture. I haven't traveled that much at the time. Didn't know the language. There were a lot of times I got stuck like with a group of like MMA guys in a car somewhere and none of them spoke English. And like, I was like, I don't know where we're going. I don't know what's happening right now. And yeah, I was training a ton and I knew I was going to be fighting. And so like one of the first days down there, we went and watched this local MMA event. And I just remember like the butterflies in my stomach. I was like, I can't believe I'm about to do this. And I think one of the things that like attracted me to MMA was the fact that it scared the shit out of me. Like I would watch it on TV, you know, you watch like Dan Henderson or Chuck Liddell back in the day, and I would just watch these fights and I would say like, you have to be insane to do that. Like I would never do that. Like you see someone just throwing an elbow in someone's bloody face. And I just remember thinking like, what kind of maniac would ever do that? And so like, because it scared me so much, it kind of also attracted me because it was like this challenge of this thing that like I was so kind of mentally, or I was so like scared of. So it was like, all right, I need to face this fear. And like, I didn't have a lot of time to, this is a crazy part too. So like, I didn't even have a lot of time to be afraid. I was there for like 20 days. And on February 21st, I think it was like, I've been there for 20 days. My coach, Ivan, comes into the room and he says, you're going to fight today. And I was like, what? And he was like, we're doing some amateur fights at the gym. You're going to fight today. And it was like it was more than sparring, but maybe less than like a real fight. It was what's called like a smoker in boxing. Mm-hmm. Like it was like one gym versus another, but it's in the cage with the referee, like, and everything. And so I was like, excuse me? He's like, yeah, you're going to fight today. You're ready. And I was like, I can't, I've been here for 20 days. I can barely throw a punch. And I was getting like my ass beat in the room, like all the time. I'm sparring with like these guys that I'm telling you, like eventually went to the UFC and everything like that. And like,
and is this daily sparring or like once a week?
We would do like a full sparring on Saturday mornings. We would go, or Sunday mornings, we would go, Saturday mornings, we would go like put the shin pads on, the headgear, and do like 3 rounds in the cage and do that whole thing. But just about every day, we practice 3 times a day. Just about every day we would go like, he would say 30%, you know, but it wasn't 30%. And they're all great guys, by the way. They were all like super supportive of me. They taught me so much. I just was talking to one of them earlier today. This was like 6 years ago, actually. I still talk to all of them. And, wow. You know, they were like super supportive, you know, showing patient with me because I didn't know anything. And like, I think they were also really grateful that I could teach the wrestling. So I was teaching them like tons of wrestling things that they didn't have access to down there. And so, yeah, it was like this, like, it was kind of like a nice situation. They would teach me striking and jiu-jitsu.
How much weight did you lose when you first got down there? They trimmed it off you?
I lost so much weight. I mean, I think in like from like my peak, let me put it this way. When I was like on Wall Street, I was probably like 165, 170, and I fought at 125.
Ooh,
so man. I lost a lot of weight when I first got down there just because I had like a constant stomach bug. I mean, I was like, you know, I was really nervous. I was really nervous and anxious because my life was just completely changed. So I was already like, didn't have much of an appetite. I'm working out 3 times a day. And I like had, you know, like stomach bug like all the time. So I immediately, I think in the first like few weeks, I dropped like 25 pounds or something like that. I mean, it was just like, it just came right off. And, you know, so I would say I was walking around like 140 or 145 maybe. And, you know, that's down from like 65 or something like that. So yeah, it came right off. And I had that fight, like I said, 20 days after I arrived, I went in there and like, I was kind of like, I'm kind of glad it went down that way because I didn't have time to be nervous because it was just like, he was like, it's in a few hours. And I said no at first. And he just kept insisting, you're going to do this. And
what happened? How'd it go?
It was like exactly like you'd expect. I basically wrestled him the whole time. Yeah. I just like took him down and like wrestled him and, did like ground and pound. It was an amateur fight, so you couldn't like elbow to the face or something. They had like a pretty restrictive rule set. But then in the third round, I like shot in, I think, shot in and just like landed like a big uppercut in my face. And I was like really, my lip like burst open, was really bloody. And the fight finished and I won because I like had dominated the fight most of the time. And I remember like my teammate, Jesus Pinedo, came in and was like, oh, like I'll wipe the blood from your face. And I was like, no, I want to get a picture. I look tough. And and I was so excited, man. It was like, because a few hours before I had not even been planning on doing this, and I had won my first fight, and that was a pretty cool moment.
Man, what a just a turning point of all turning points for you. And I know we can't sit on here and talk all day, but I'm just curious, why did your career end, and what was the next step after the MMA circuit for you down there?
Yeah, well, so I mean, I kind of like I fought another amateur fight like 2 weeks later, and I fought my pro debut like a little bit after that, and I fought 3 professional fights, and I was doing really well, and at a certain point, I just kind of was like, all right, this has been so interesting, but it's a lot of things kind of happened at the same time that were like, you know what, maybe this is not the answer. And so like I got injured. I cut my finger and it turned into like this crazy trigger finger and I couldn't like open it. Like it was just like stuck shut. And I went to all these doctors down there and they couldn't fix it. Then the gym ran into financial problems and this rich guy kind of disappeared for whatever reason and the gym closed. It eventually reopened after like much later. The gym closed, the league stopped. And then, at the time I was, I started to abuse prescription drugs that they had sold kind of down there, like over the counter.
Yeah.
And I went through this awful experience. So I realized I did it for like a little bit. And then I was like, oh shit, I should stop. And I stopped and went through this awful withdrawal. And I had like, it was one of the worst experiences of my life, and I had to reconsider a lot of things. And I met a girl, and so like it was just kind of like this like bam, 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 bam set of circumstances, and I just kind of like had to really reevaluate. And I was like, you know what? Maybe getting punched in the head is not the answer. And before that, I had been very committed to it. I've been like, I want to be a UFC champion one day. It wasn't just like I was like kind of jumping in, like I was doing it fully, but it was like at a certain point, okay, I think I went from one crazy extreme to another, and I'm like, maybe this is not the answer either. And so,
was that scary though to admit that to yourself?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was really. I think, like I said, I had gone through this withdrawal, and so I was having a lot of issues, and it was another probably period of like depression in my life. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I did this big thing and I thought this would be the solution. I thought I would have like this kind of like amazing time and this experience, and kind of like a lot of things crashed down around me. And yeah, I mean, long story short, I got a job teaching English in Spain after that. There's long story short, I got a job teaching English in Spain, and I moved to Madrid after a year in Peru.
Why did you not go back to United States?
I think at this point I had realized that what I wanted in life was this adventure and this new sense of novelty and experience. And I had these absolutely amazing experiences in Peru. Like I did some traveling around Peru, and like the life abroad for me, it was so interesting. What would maybe be like just you get sick and go to the pharmacy to get like some cold medicine here, but that becomes like a whole adventure down there. You have to speak in a different language. You don't know the culture. You don't know how to get there, taking some bus or doing whatever. And so I kind of got like, to use the term addicted, like using that a lot. I guess I'm addicted to a lot of things.
Me too.
I kind of got addicted to this lifestyle, and it was just so fascinating to me to learn about different cultures and languages. And I was learning Spanish, and I was meeting these amazing people abroad, the most interesting people. And that's kind of like why eventually fast forward, 5 years, I started my podcast, and I was like, I've met so many amazing people. Like, I think a lot of people see what I do and they think, man, that guy's crazy. And I like know other people. I'm like my very first episode, I was like interviewing this girl, Marina, who's been to 106 countries as a solo female traveler. And like, I just am like, I know all of these other amazing people. And so it's just been so inspirational to me. And like, you get to meet these cool people, and I travel around and I stay in hostels, and I have made amazing connections with people that have just even like from every country in the world. And it's just been so exciting for me.
Man, and people talk up, some people say that doesn't interest me at all. I never want to do that. I'm the camp where I say that sounds absolutely amazing, but I'm more so a man of a daily routine. And I get outside of that, I get a little weird. So did you develop, and I can imagine you're a type A cat, you were a Penn guy, a Wall Street guy, you probably had your routines. Did you get back when you got down to Peru, were you living like did you ever get like a normal job and you were kind of doing your own thing, or were you just kind of living this wild life the whole time you were down there?
I was
going to say after the fighting stopped, or maybe you left right away after that, but after the fighting stopped.
I left pretty quickly after not pretty quickly. I was down there. I started writing my book. I started writing this book, and then I went to Spain after that. And I mean, in Spain, that was kind of like, I think the period in Spain, I was in Spain for like 3 years. I was teaching English at like a high school. I lived in Madrid and in the Canary Islands. And I think that was kind of like a better balance, like of stability, like having a normal, going into work, but also living in a foreign country and having these adventurous experience. And I mean, it's funny. I am kind of like this a little bit type A, but I'm also like a person that I do very well in chaos. I think like, okay. I'm not someone that needs like a daily routine. And the last like 5 years have been like very chaotic and very uncertain. And I think I can handle a level of uncertainty that would drive most people completely insane. And so, yeah, I've traveled all around Europe. I've kind of done a lot of like backpacking and hitchhiking and all this crazy stuff. So it's been amazing.
And I have a couple of questions I want to ask more so about some of your travels, but last thing from Peru, did you ever try ayahuasca to help with the addictions? And if so, did it work?
I did not try ayahuasca. I thought about it and I considered it, but it just kind of scared me, and I wasn't in the right mental state at the time. Yeah. And I know that there's a lot of people that have gotten a lot of help from it, from addictions and from depression and PTSD and everything like that. And I have a friend that owns an ayahuasca center, and like I know a lot of people have done it. It just didn't seem right, and so I never got around to that, but maybe one day.
Trust the gut. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the stories I saw on Instagram that I have to ask for the listeners' sake here, running with the Bulls, why were you up all night the night before, and talk us through the next day?
So I was doing what's called the Camino de Santiago at the time. So there's like a path through the north of Spain. It starts just over the Pyrenees in France, and it's 500 miles, and you walk across the north of Spain, and it's traditionally a pilgrimage, but like I wasn't doing it for that. I was just doing it for fun. It's kind of like a shorter version of the Appalachian Trail, but flat and like a little bit less rural. And so I kind of timed it so that after I would get to Pamplona right in time for the running of the Bulls, and I didn't have a place to stay because you have to book them like years in advance there. So I had a friend that lived not too far from there, and I left my bag at her place. And I just went out and stayed out all night at in Pamplona, and it was amazing. I mean, it's so amazing. It's so much fun. Everyone's just spraying wine from balconies, and like people from all over the world, and it's really a great time. And so, in the morning, I was like, I had been up all night, and it was like 8 a.m. They start the running of the Bulls, and so I get into like the kind of corral, and
What's the nerves like when you're in the corral for the running with the bulls? I can't even fathom it, man.
So it's similar to an MMA fight. I
Yeah.
would say that the feeling is like, okay, I'm going to die. And I would say in both instances, I think it's an interesting feeling because in both cases, your rational mind knows that you're not going to die. Like, you know that rationally the probability is like insanely low. You know, riding a motorcycle is more dangerous than either one of them. And so you know that you're not going to die, but there's like that I don't know, the subconscious or like the reptilian mind is like, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. And like, you know, images play through your head of like getting gored by a bull and coughing up blood and like all this stuff. And so, you know, it was there. And like, I think one of my things, like I said about MMA, is like facing fears. And so like, I always like, if something scares me, I want to do it. And so, yeah, I was there. I hadn't slept at all. I had like wine all over my white clothes. And I like, if you read the story on Instagram, you know the rest of this.
But tell me about the part where you jump up. It's like you start and you jump up and you're kind of hanging above the bulls and you say, screw that, I'm getting back in the mix, and you go back in again.
Yeah, so like I was starting to run, the bulls were coming, and like I saw this guy like standing on the side, and he kind of like looked up, and there was like kind of window with like bars over it, like on the side, because it's a closed street, which is also even more terrifying. It's like walled on both sides, and he like kind of jumped up and grabbed, and I was like, oh, it's not a bad idea. And just in that moment, I reached up, jumped up and grabbed the bars and pulled myself up, and the bulls ran underneath. And you know, as I was up there, I was like, man, you can't do this. Like, you gotta go run with the bulls. What are you doing? And so I dropped down like right after and ran after them. And like, I was running alongside one of them, and I reached out and just like touched it on the lower back, like for like, you know, a fraction of a second. And I just like remember just being so like the adrenaline and the like pure euphoria of the moment. Like, I was so excited about that. And yeah, that was like that was definitely one of my favorite moments I've had. Man,
it's just the to your point, the feeling of like excitement and accomplishment afterwards is worth the fear of doing it many times. I mean, you had to be on cloud 9 the rest of that day.
Yeah, I was like just giddy after that. I mean, it was so cool. It's one of those things like, I mean, again, I would compare it to an MMA fight. Like, you're terrified beforehand. Like, you're just thinking like, I hope this gets canceled. I hope, you know, like, I hope I trip and fall and get hurt before I go out there, and I can't do this. But then once it's finished, you're like on cloud 9, and it's just this amazing feeling of euphoria. And I don't think there's any feeling like that out there.
And that's why people chase it, man. That's why you're kind of doing the things you've done. We're barely scratching the surface, so I encourage people to check out the book. Also, you have this podcast. It's called the Divergent Path Podcast. Is that right?
Yep.
Tell folks about that and why you started that.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying before, like, I just met all these amazing people, and so it started with that. I was like, well, I just have cool people, but I've gotten the chance to interview so many amazing people. As you know, having a podcast is amazing. You just get to talk to like interesting people all the time, and you know, it's like, it's amazing because I'm someone, like, I read a lot, and I'm passionate about writing and all this stuff. So I've interviewed, I think, 20 something authors, and I just like, you know, you read a book and you send them a message like, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? And so, yeah, I've got to talk to really cool people, and from all walks of life. I mean, I've had a New Yorker cartoonist on there. I've interviewed Kendall Cross and Jeff Buxton and Tom Ryan in the wrestling world, and yeah, just have some amazing conversations. And so, yeah, I mean, it's great to be here and speak with you. You know,
we talk about addictions. Podcasting is one of the most fun things you could do, and as you know, anytime you start one, it's just such an exciting feeling. And the feeling after a podcast, a good one like this, I'm in a good mood for the rest of the night. Whereas I might have 4 shitty sales calls and 1 good sales call, and I don't feel nearly as good as this. So it's definitely a selfish thing. I'm sure you can attest to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think like it's so cool after an hour of talking to someone in this kind of like setup, you feel like you're like old buddies or something like that.
Right.
And so yeah, it's cool. Like again, like I get to interview these cool people, and then like you have a question about something later, just shoot them a message, and like it's been really amazing, and it's kind of like a way to keep in touch with everyone. Everyone like people tune in, and it's been really fun. I didn't think I would like it so much, and I love podcasting.
Me too, man. Last question, and this is because I'm doing some writing myself right now. What's your favorite book on writing besides Stephen King's On Writing?
I have like a lot. I've read probably like 20 books about writing, but I would say Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott is really good, and then Story by Robert McKee, which is a screenwriting book, but
it's a big one. I got that. That's huge. Yeah,
dude, that's the Bible of storytelling. I would say that it's the whether you're going to be like whether you want to write like good marketing, copywriting, or stand-up comedy, or just telling good stories to your friends. Like I think Robert McKee's book has taught me more than anything else. Really, it's a fantastic book.
Have you ever read Draft Number 4?
Yes.
Do you like it?
John McPhee. Yeah.
I got it on the shelf. Haven't pulled the trigger on it.
Yeah, I would say that it's like a little more like high level than like Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird is the best place to start. Like you want to like if you're like a beginning writer, like On Writing by Stephen King or Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird are like the best to start. Then Draft Number 4 is not as comprehensive, not like a full guide to it, but it has like a lot of like really cool, interesting points to it. The other one I would say is have you read the War of Art?
Oh my God, Stephen Pressfield's the man.
Yeah. So that one's a good one. Like it's not a conventional writing book, but it's a good I always say that it's a kick in the ass, and it's a good book to read for just about anything.
The one I'm reading now that's really making an impact is The Writer's Journey, and it takes so if you're familiar with Joseph Campbell, he has this book, I think it's A Hero of 1,000 Faces. And
yeah, I've read that.
Yeah, so this guy takes that, and the guy who wrote this, I got it right here. Whatever it's on this front, but he was an executive at Disney, and he came across A Hero with 1,000 Faces, and he goes, "This is literally the hero's journey is every story that's ever done well." And so he broke it down and kind of synthesized it in a more of a how-to approach.
Well, so Joseph Campbell had a huge impact on George Lucas, and they were like friends. And so Star Wars follows the hero's journey. It's called the monomyth to a T almost. And then I think one thing though is like a lot of movies have become almost formulaic. Like if you look at a movie, these are all like amazing movies, so I'm not saying they're formulaic in a bad way, but it's like a kind of standard formula. Is like The Matrix or even the Lego movie have the same kind of like there's like the Joseph Campbell like plot. It's like, you have the first threshold, and then you have the encounter with the father figure and the mother and like all of these different things. So
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, absolutely.
I can talk about this for hours.
I love it, man. I love it. I'm doing a documentary on John Smith right now. It comes out in January. So I'm in the heavy writing phase now. We did a bunch of interviews this summer. So I've just been kind of rehashing some of it, and how I got onto Joseph Campbell. Tim Ferriss, I know you know who that is. He recently, one of his episodes, he found these interviews that Joseph Campbell did with PBS before he died.
The Power of Myth.
Yes.
Which I've seen, yeah. And then there's also a book that's transcribed into a book, which I've read, yeah.
But he just took part one of that and played it on the Tim Ferriss podcast, and that's why I found out about him. I'm like, holy shit, dude, how have I never heard of this guy? And I just kind of went down the rabbit hole from there.
Yeah, like most of modern movies have been like really impacted by Joseph Campbell, who's a mythologist, and yeah, so I mean, definitely good. And I would say that if you're doing like writing for a documentary, yeah, like the Story by Robert McKee would be a great one to read. And and if you want any other recommendations, let me know. And if you want anyone to check anything out, I'm always here. Have you read the Cowboy Up?
Yes.
I have that. I see that right there on my shelf. I read that a long time ago, and I also have The Power of Myth right there. And that book is amazing.
Yeah, the Cowboy Up, the wrestling one.
Yeah.
It is. I didn't even know. There's a couple books out there on that, but that was one of the first ones I got my hands on.
I think that's one of the best wrestling books, actually.
Yeah, It's good. The chapter on John Smith himself, I read it like 4 times. I just had no idea some of the things he went through, and that was kind of the tipping point for that.
Yeah, I read that back in college, and I even remember, like, I remember there's a great quote from it where he's saying, like, how, like, he's like, Tiger Woods, you give him like a 3-iron when he needs a wedge, it doesn't matter, he'll make it work, he'll just find a way to win. And like, he's talking about like wrestlers, how they could just find a way to win. And yeah, John Smith's amazing. I mean, I remember those early Flow Wrestling videos with him, watched those like a million times, and really inspirational guy.
Yeah, it's been awesome to just sit down and talk with him. I'm excited to get the story out there. It's going to be an audio documentary series that comes out in January.
Are you doing it in like podcast form or?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I'm obsessed with ESPN 30 for 30s. And
oh yeah.
Like The Last Dance is one of my favorite documentaries of all time. And there's so many good ones that they've done. But when I first started wanting to do stories, I'm like, all right, a film documentary seems there's a lot of steps involved there, but shit, a podcast documentary, you know, if you can master the fundamentals of storytelling, it's not as hard to get good interview footage, you know, as it is to getting really good camera footage. So I did one on Gable, and I did another one on this kind of this smaller story in Illinois. And then this summer started working with USA Wrestling and the National Hall of Fame to produce this series called The Smiths. It's going to be a 7-part audio doc.
That's amazing. That's really cool. I mean, that's like, it's great to be able to, you know, take this this podcast format kind of thing and to produce things like that. And yeah, I mean, I'm, as I said before, I'm a big fan of the world of podcasting, and I think it's still, even though there's like 2 million podcasts out there, it's still developing in so many ways. And I think more organizations are going to start using podcasts to their advantage, and it's definitely going to yeah, it's gonna be amazing. And so that's really cool. I can't wait to listen to the John Smith things.
It's liberating that you don't have to have anyone helping you. You know, you can do it from your apartment or wherever you're at right now, and like I can do it from here. It's like all you need is a Zoom account and they're free.
Yeah, and it's so easy now. I wanted to start one like 4 or 5 years ago, I remember, and like back then recording it was a little bit more difficult and like all this stuff, and I kind of like started doing it and then I just gave up. But now it's like so easy to do, and people always say to me like, "Oh, man, it must be so difficult with all those professionals." I'm like, you know, I do it myself. So it's not too bad, you know, and it's fun. It allows you access to so many interesting people, as I said before.
Indeed. And now you are one of those on this podcast, Rollie. It has been a pleasure to have you on, sir. I've been looking forward to this for a couple of weeks now. I'm glad we could dig into it. Book is The Cage, Divergent Path Podcast. Rollie Peterkin, look him up, folks. Thank you very much for your time, my friend.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here, and nice to meet you. And I'm glad that you enjoyed the Linden store in Wellesley, Massachusetts.
Dude, I got the menu pulled up here. It's been on my screen since we started, and I'm just salivating right now because I'm not supposed to be eating bread during the week, so I got a sandwich shop menu in front of me. Not good.
Yeah, man. Well, it's great to meet you.
Likewise, brother. Take care. And all great things must come to an end. If you want to hear more from the podcast, text Wrestle to 555-888. That's Wrestle to 555-888. You can also find us on Instagram, Wrestling Changed My Life, Twitter, Ryan_N_Warner, as well as our website, WrestlingChangedMyLife.com. Take care, y'all. 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 Take care, y'all.